But there's plenty to talk about, Shannon, in the world of football, not just for Indiana, but, of course, college football across the board. But why not start with Indiana? Because I win. Google me.
Yeah, that was I was telling you before you came on, I used that once with my wife out of
How'd that go for you?
Disagreement, and it didn't go over well, but a couple days later, she did Google me. And she was surprised.
Well, you're lucky you didn't say Wikipedia me, and she goes in there and changes everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, like yesterday, in my opinion, based upon the time period that Coach Cignetti and his staff had to work with in general, I thought it was a pretty darn good job trying to either maintain what they already had in the hopper, because they had to reevaluate all those kids. And then on top of that, getting some key transfer portal kids to come in, especially the Rourke kid from Ohio, which I thought was a huge victory for them in that regard. Here's a kid that's thrown for 7,000 yards, MAC Player of the Year in 2022, I believe. And on top of that, I think he had a 10-win season and a 9-win season, a part of the Ohio Bobcats that also went to the bowl games that year. So I liked his answer. I liked his, description of why he goes to the portal. He's not looking for guys that maybe have potential. He's looking for guys that have a body of work that can be evaluated and critiqued. And at the quarterback position, you've got to have somebody that knows how to play that position. And that's exactly what they got with Rourke.
Yeah, and not only that, you get back he gets back a lot of pieces, a lot of important pieces in the Indiana offense that they did have. None bigger than Donovan McCulley, of course, a prime target now. Although his prime target at Ohio is also in the fold in Indiana, so there's a lot of comfortability there. Indiana brought in some wide receivers. On top of that, through the portal, brought in some running backs. You get back Trent Howland in out of the portal, another big recouper, because he really came on at the end of the year. And Josh Henderson dealt with some injuries. They gave him opportunities. So the offense is really taking shape. Of course, the big question will remain that offensive line. I know that they've gotten a few recruits in. You've got a couple of guys in from Wisconsin, which is exactly where you want an offensive lineman to come from. You want that big corn-fed northern guys. That's why Wisconsin ran the damn ball like they did all those years. But Bob Bostad being with that Wisconsin background, man, you can kind of see that coming together. There's a reason he kept Bob Bostad. He was the only guy he kept on the staff.
Well, no question. Coach Bobstad's, body of work speaks for itself, and well known within the coaching profession for the offensive line play. You're absolutely right as far as the offensive line goes. I still think they need a couple more, and maybe that's what he's awaiting to announce here after the bowl season, which I kind of summarized. Those kids may be playing for James Madison, quite honestly. But,
well, some of them are, but there may be others that are playing for other places. But yeah, and he's taking a hit because of the James Madison kids he's pulled out already.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that same dynamic involves James Madison now with Holy Cross, because I already saw a couple Holy Cross kids going to James Madison. So yeah, the fans weren't too happy with him, but the tackle kid, Trey, I think it's Weedig from Wisconsin, 6'7", 300-pound body kid, and if they can pull in a couple more like that, absolutely got some, their stock on the offensive line immediately rises. Depth has always been an issue at that position. I thought they got some good freshmen at that spot too, that can be added into that mix. And but yeah, I think they addressed the things that they needed to address on a short window of recruiting, and they were able to get those older players out of the portal, especially like you said, getting Donovan back, getting Holland back, and then adding to that around it. I thought was a pretty darn good job done. Now, if you paid attention to rankings, you know, it looks like that's not a very good recruiting class because they ranked like 17th out of the Big Ten. And, you know, I mean, again, I think that's discussion stuff, but I think when you look at it individually about the positions that they needed based upon who they got coming in as first-year players, I thought it was pretty darn good. Getting the Tyler Cherry kid out of Center Grove, that kind of fell into their lap in some respects, but that kid's a dynamite player. So when you look at that, he's going to be a mid-year enrollee. When those guys come back in January, that quarterback room is going to be Rourke, Taven Jackson, Brock Lowry, and Tyler Cherry. That is going to be an interesting competition to watch, because that competition will start January when they come back on campus. It won't start when football, you know, in the spring start. It'll start right then and there, and he's going to have his eye on who's the leader, who can rally the troops in the weight room, in the morning workouts, and things of that magnitude. And it'll be interesting to see who kind of steps up in that regard.
Yeah, there's no doubt Indiana is going to have a real quarterback battle at least this spring and this summer. And that's not going to be something I think fans have to worry about after that going forward. That stuff is going to be determined before the season, because you cannot go into a season not knowing who your damn leader is.
Right. Absolutely.
You just can't, especially when you still don't know 6 games into the freaking season. That just all that says is, maybe we made the wrong choice. But that's a problem that's not going to come around this year, and that's great for Indiana fans, great for Indiana football, and it's also great to know that you're going to have some depth, because if there are injuries, you're going to have guys that are ready to go and ready to step in there. And that, I'm trying to think back, when Nate Sudfeld maybe was a freshman, there were, I can't remember the other 2 guys that were in that quarterback's room. All 3 of them played. Kevin Wilson had 3 different guys. It
was Cameron Kaufman and Trey Roberson who were on
there. You go.
There you go.
Indiana has not. I mean, that's the last time Indiana had a quarterback's room like that, and those guys were all kind of different in each of their ways. But man, the talent that he's got pulled in there right now, it's going to be fun. And it's not just on the offensive side of the ball. Ton of DBs. Jaja Boyd, number 1, a recruit. That's a big-time recruit for Indiana, a 4-star defensive player. They don't get many of those. No. And the athleticism they're going to have in that defensive backfield next year is going to be I can go back just not very long ago, back in 2020, I guess it was, when Indiana led the country in takeaways. They were pretty good in the defensive backfield then, but this is going to give them the most young talent they've had in a long time at that position.
Yeah, and they kind of opened up a new area for them in recruiting, and that being the Pennsylvania area where Boyd is from. You know, he's one of those kids that can be that shutdown corner you need outside there that can go one-on-one and lock up some people. But you know, the other thing is when you talk about the competitiveness of a different rooms, the wide receiver room is going to be ultra competitive. I mean, they brought in some really good, talented receivers, like you talked about. You know, Keshawn Williams, Miles Price, those 2 kids are going to be pretty dynamic players. You got the Cross kid, I believe, as well. That's the gentleman from Ohio U. So that's going to be a great wide receiver room. And of course, the running back room is going to be a very competitive room. And, you know, as a former coach, I mean, that's when you recruit, that's what, whether you're trying to get older players, via the portal or whatever, you're looking to create a room where there is big time competition, because it prevents complacency by the kids that are overly, talented. If you bring in talented players, it takes that complacency right out of the equation for that room, because you've got 4 or 5 guys that are competing against you for the biggest part of playing time. And so with that being said, that's what I think he was able to do, because that was one of his quotes about, winning, battling every day to keep complacency out of the equation. And I think he's done that with some of these portal guys that he's able to brought into the mix this year.